Hello, everybody. This is Hui-chin from Pavlov Financial Planning, and I'm here with Jody Harris from World Tree Coaching today again with this episode of Life, Money, and Globetrotting. And today we're going to talk about why. So I think it's a pretty big topic, um, but for some reason, the past few weeks, I just keep thinking about um, you know, we may or may not have the choice originally to start, globetrotting. Maybe you were dependent or you thought it was fun originally, so you started. But there's always a choice to stay in it.
Right.
And, why do we stay in it? And it would be interesting to see, to hear about other people's perspective and really think about, why we're doing this. So, Jody.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a long time. So what do you think? What is that motivation that keep you stay in this?
Oh gosh, I think that there are really so many. I think part of it is just that I don't remember a time in my life, in all honesty, where I wasn't fantasizing or thinking about living around the world. I mean, my earliest memories included that. And and I was fortunate, I guess, that my parents always said, like, okay, sure, whatever you want to do. Like, there wasn't really anything they discouraged, me or my brother from doing. And so, like I always knew I would study abroad in college, for example. Like I knew I would. And, from really early on, I thought I would join the Peace Corps, which I never did. I almost did. But then I worked for Peace Corps later, so there were always these things that I felt kind of drawn to do. And I think that was kind of the initial why, but I also think at the same time, a lot of it had to do with meeting my husband, who also had those interests and those desires. Because certainly there was a point at which I was like, am I going to do this by myself? What if I want to get married? What if I want to have kids, And I wasn't really sure that other people had that same interest.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I met him, he did. And then we kind of feed each other.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What was your, I don't know, your why? Why'd you get started?
I sort of have very similar sort of start of it. Like I always sort of knew I was going to go overseas at some point. I didn't know it was going to turn into from one country to the other from the very beginning. But yeah, and it started and it hasn't ended for some reason. And I am still enjoying it by myself, not by myself, I mean, with my husband, but I'm still enjoying the lifestyle in a sense that I'm not tired of it yet, which you hear a lot of people talk about. Yeah. And we do talk about it from time to time as well, that there are moments they're just like, why are we still doing this? Maybe we should make a change. But I think one of the interesting thing I was thinking about is also this label trailing spouse, because I personally don't think it's a label. I think it's fine using this because we are sort of trailing another person's job. No, I don't necessarily think it's my purpose. It is, it's a status. So I feel like that's how I feel about it. So being a trailing spouse is a status that I am doing this, but it's not my purpose. I feel like a lot of times that trailing spouses feel that they're sort of like, not sure why they're doing this because they haven't found that purpose, especially if you started it because your husband gets a job overseas.
Right. Or you're right.
Yeah. If maybe you always wanted to, have an adventure. So your husband getting a job overseas is the best thing had happened to you.
Right.
But not everybody. And having this kind of label on you is not helping.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think? Like, how do you think about this?
I actually really think that is true. And I think, like you mentioned, if your husband gets a job overseas, but I think there is more and more kind of a divide between either partner.
Either gender or.
Yeah. And I think that as a result, and, different people approach it differently, but certainly I think that for me, when we were looking at working overseas, my husband and I were both looking at possibilities, and we just kind of, actually the opportunity for me came up first.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a position in a graduate program in the UK, and, I'd already gone to graduate school, so it was like additional graduate school. And, it was a perfect fit for me. We were really excited. My husband was a journalist. He could keep working for the same organization when we went overseas. And then what ended up being the issue is just because I would have been an international student, I didn't have the same, we had 2 kids at that time, so we didn't have the same access to childcare. And we just decided that, and we had a house, and we just decided we couldn't afford it. And so then when he got the position with the State Department about 6 months later, I had deferred, but then his opportunity seemed like a better move, like it made more sense. And so, but at any rate, it was both of us. I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to look into this, because the goal was to live overseas and to work overseas and to have a more international lifestyle. And I think both of us have met people personally and professionally where one side of the partnership never had a desire to live in another country, always wanted to live in the same place and be near their family and friends and not have those people change. And it's so interesting because it's almost, to me, like incomprehensible. Like I'm like, really? And I think the thing that I found like the most telling is that I had this friend, and her husband is, he grew up in Mexico and she grew up in the States. And when they first met, they thought, that they would kind of live internationally and maybe not just in Mexico, but other places in the world or other places in Latin America. And they tried it for maybe 6 months or a year, and they were just like, no way, we need to be in one place. We need that sense of community. And so when we started our international life, she was like, oh, just the thought of that just like scares me to death. I can't imagine. And I may have told you this story before, but my response to her was like, so that's how I feel when I think about staying in one place forever. And it was the first time I really understood the different perspective. Like, to me, it's unimaginable that you would want to stay somewhere. But of course, obviously, that's what most people do, that you'd want to stay somewhere forever. But I think that if you never, ever wanted to live other places, like how excruciating it must be at times, and how difficult it must be to find your purpose, to find your why, because then it becomes maybe the why is only because you're trailing your spouse or partner.
Yeah.
And that's a weird sense of self-worth,
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what I'm trying to get at for this episode, is having that purpose even though you didn't start from that place at the very beginning, right? Like
right.
So as a life coach, how can you help people
right.
with that if they started out really just following a husband, but I feel or wife or spouse or whatever, but eventually I feel like there needs to every single person in this journey needs to find that why for him or herself.
Right. Yeah. And as a coach, my job, like, I definitely get people that come to me that are like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Right.
Yeah.
But we have to start from the place that if they're doing it, then that's what they've chosen. Right.
Yeah.
So my job isn't to convince people to stick with this lifestyle if they don't really want to, because if you don't really want to, you have to seize on a different opportunity. Right? You have to stop. You have to do something else. Yeah. But if you've decided already, this isn't what I originally thought I would be doing with my life, but I choose it. Like every day I wake up and I choose this lifestyle. My job is to help people find that why and to feel motivated to make the choice every day to connect to their values and sense of place and their sense of belonging, their sense of home, no matter where they are. So sometimes people say, I'm not sure I can continue to do this. And they develop, like we all do, these kind of like fantasies about what home would be like. And so we walk through, okay, what are the values and the desires that are represented in this sense of home that you're creating, that you know you're never going to go back to? Like, you know, you're never going to move back to that small town in the Oregon mountains, for example. You know, you're not going to do that, but there's something that's appealing about that value, or there are values within that fantasy. And how do we access those and allow those to be part of the lifestyle that you've chosen that isn't that other one? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So try to live the life you thought you would be living, the things that you want to do in your current setting if you don't have a choice to go to the other place.
And either practically speaking, right? Like it, or, you know, or it's also about the way in which you live. You know, so if you were really, really drawn to creating like a home space that was really community oriented, and you had people always coming over and potlucks and things like that, then that sense of community is really important to you. And there's no reason you can't create that in an international lifestyle. It's just accepting that you can and going forward with it. You know?
Yeah.
How does that come up? I don't know. Does that kind of translate into your work? How does that come up for you at all?
Well, not necessarily for my work, but I think the idea of having a purpose and a why, it goes into a lot of basically into our everyday life, and then affects how we look at our finances. So it definitely has some kind of correlation. It's not necessarily a sort of some like a big thing that comes up, but I do feel like there's some kind of interesting sort of parallel when I work with people who don't have a goal or just don't know what they're planning for. And I do have clients like that. They know they need to manage money well, and we always say, oh, you're supposed to manage money according to how you want to live your life and how you envision your future, if you have any. And their answer would be, don't know. I'm not really sure where it's going. The current job is fine, it's not that fulfilling, it's not the best, but I also don't have any other thoughts about what else I might be able to do, or and I don't necessarily think it's going to be better than what I'm doing now. And I don't know if I ever want to retire, when I want to retire, if I retire, what I'm going to do. So it's like, so for these kind of people, like the future is sort of like a sea of unknown. And it actually makes planning quite difficult when you don't have any thoughts and ideas and purpose for how you want to live your life.
And it makes it very difficult when people either don't have a vision or for some reason struggle to access that vision.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one big thing both of us do sometimes, is helping people come up with some vision what they want to do. Of course, there's always that level of flexibility. We don't know what you exactly want to do in the future, or if you're going to get there. But if there is no goal at all, it makes what you're doing, even if you're just doing prudent financial planning, it makes feel like it's pointless.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't exactly know what you are doing going to help you in the future.
Right.
Yeah. So I like this idea of helping people have a vision of where they're going. And do you see a lot of people like that, sort of, especially if you started as a trailing partner?
Yeah.
That
I see it all the time. Like most of my clients And I think I even have this on my website. Like, if you're asking the question, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is the core of the why, and I think it comes up a lot for people who are particularly like trained in a profession that really requires like you to work in a particular field, like, teachers or doctors or lawyers or nurses or therapists. I think, for example, people that have a background, let's say like in business or administration or something like that, they often are able to find something that is fulfilling because there's kind of a wide net of stuff that you can do. But if you have a highly concentrated, highly specialized field, it's a little bit harder from a work perspective, right? But I think too, sometimes I wonder if it feels like this comes up more in the expat community, but in reality, it just comes up. Like, people just, regardless of a mobile lifestyle or not, have this sense of, what is my purpose? Why am I doing this? I have to believe that's true. I have to believe that there are people who, even if they're more or less content with their life, if they're, a nurse and they work in the same hospital for 30 years, that there are points at which they're like, wow, time is passing and I'm not sure I want to keep doing this, and then that becomes the like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, actually, so we talked about earlier that helping people find that purpose if they don't have the choice to not necessarily does not have the choice, but just due to circumstances, or reality, they just have to stay in this kind of life or expat life.
Yeah.
But how about for people who just want to get out? How do you help them get out?
If people want to get out of the like foreign,
instead of just okay, say, all right, let's just pack everything and leave next week. Is there like some kind of steps that you can help people to, okay, if they really come to a place, they know that this is not for them, how do they transition back, or to not even back to where they were, but really towards
what
you think they're going?
I have worked with a lot of people who are questioning whether or not they want to continue in this lifestyle. And I've never had, that I can think of off the top of my head, I don't think I've ever had a client who ultimately decided while working with me that this lifestyle wasn't for them. I've also had clients who've recently left, but they work with me kind of as they're transitioning out. So, I think this step for people, it's so frightening, right, to think about getting out of it, because it feels like maybe for some people, once you leave, how do you ever get back in? If you change your mind, it's such a huge decision. But I think that some of the steps are, the same kind of work that I do in other situations with people, anytime people are trying to make a decision, are making sure to spend time examining, your values and what's really important to you and what really matters. Because those things should exist regardless of where you live and regardless of your profession. And so I think a lot of times when people are trying to make a decision, they tend to, this is the metaphor I always use, it's like you're riding a bicycle and you're like, oh, the bicycle's messed up, and you're like throwing all these tools at the bicycle. But if you don't take time to look at the road and there's all these potholes and gravel and stuff, then it doesn't matter how many tools you throw at the bicycle. And so I think it takes practice first, living from doing work around your values and living from your values, because then you have a clear picture of why or why not to stay with the lifestyle you've chosen, and you're going to feel more confident in the choice that you make.
I sometimes feel like even when people do know in their hearts what is the right thing to do, they need some kind of
Yeah.
Or just like not like necessarily just like, you know, pushing off the edge, but just like some kind of yeah, like how sometimes you know exactly, you know, in your heart
Mhm.
you should go somewhere, or you know, not live this lifestyle anymore, or any other decision.
Mhm.
But
Mhm. Mhm.
it's very
Yeah.
difficult because there's that myopia
Right. Right. Right.
in
Yeah.
your life. Like like you said, it's always scary to make a drastic change from your status quo. Do you have any like tips
Mm.
on
Yeah.
helping
Yeah.
people to actually make the first leap?
Right. I ask people to spend time um, kind of visualizing like what would be the reality of that different life, you know? It's like my kids always are like, you know, my middle son in particular, he's like, I want to move back to Texas and live there forever. And I'm like, you know, it's not all swimming pools and tacos. Like every time you're there, that's what it is. But it's normal life, you know, you still have to go to school, you know, it's not always summer there, you know.
Mm.
Maybe it's always tacos, but it's not, not the way he thinks it is, right? So visualizing what would be the reality of that experience, um, trying on that experience, like imagining for a day that the decision has been made,
Mm.
and see how you feel. A lot too is giving yourself permission to take some steps forward. So
Mm.
if you wanted to, you know, leave the international lifestyle, um, look for and apply for some jobs. Don't tell anyone. You don't have to tell anyone,
Mm.
but apply for some jobs in the place you're thinking of moving and see what happens. You know, sometimes people, even just the process of doing that, um, helps them make a decision, whether it's to stay in the lifestyle or not.
Yeah, you brought out a good point that actually just almost like you have to take action before you know for sure
Mm-hmm,
what
mm-hmm.
you want to do
Yeah,
and
right.
lead.
No, I think it's true. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a really big fan of the like trying things out but not really telling people, you know, at first, you know, just see what it feels like, you know, if you think you might want to move back, okay, even, you know, talking to a coach or talking to your financial planner or talking to one close friend and just say, you know, what's the criteria for this? What do I need to know about my financial decision if I make decision A? And you can even say, I'm not making decision A. I just want to know how that would look for me. Or that's the same thing with applying for the jobs. I'm not taking a job. I'm just applying. I just want to see what happens. And it can, if you see how you feel when you do that, then you have a sense.
Mm.
But you can do it without, you can do all that stuff without risk because it's just investigating.
Mm. Yeah, but I also feel like from a financial point of, well, not financial, but it's an economic point of view, like yeah, you're saying when you're doing something without risk, usually there's no reward, right? Meaning eventually, if you really want to see your life going a different direction,
Mm-hmm.
like in a more general, large point of view,
That's true.
sometimes you just need to take the risk.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. And testing the waters can, I think, boost your confidence. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I always tell people baby steps count. So, you know, just testing the waters helps you feel, you know, maybe you can do it. And then once you do take the risk, you feel more prepared.
Yeah, and I think one thing we have to all remember is that most of us started this lifestyle by taking a risk,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So the risk may or may not pay off for you, and
Right.
it's okay
Right.
because you may see a lot of people that seem like, oh, this is so worth it,
Uh-huh.
but it may not be for you because you don't reap the reward. That you take the risk, you might feel like you're losing, but
Mm-hmm.
you know it's the economic um, rule that not nobody is winning all the time. So yeah, if you take the risk of doing this, and it's in itself a great decision that you've made,
Right. Right.
whether it's a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. 20 years ago, there's always a point in time you can say you can stop.
Right.
This is a loss for you. You don't have to keep taking the loss after 20 years. You can take a risk in something else that may give you the reward that you're looking for.
Yeah, and that makes me think about the fact that in this lifestyle, perhaps people are more prepared to really think about and investigate that question of why, because they already have taken risks that involve investigating the why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if it's just deciding between two different positions, like, do I want this job because it's, in a really cool country with really great places to travel, even though the job itself doesn't seem so great? Or do I want this job because the job looks awesome, even though, it's kind of not that great of a place to live? And then you're looking at your values. What's more important? This overall kind of lifestyle where you get to do fun things with your family in the weekend, or the actual interest level of the job, and that comes back to ask why. I think people evaluate that regularly.
And I also feel like it might be coming out of the left field or something, but it's like also I feel like this is not just individual sort of why as well as a couple. Especially if we're talking about trailing spouses or not situation, have expat partner situation.
Right.
You might have, each of you have different why, but together you also need to have a why.
Right.
Because like you said, like maybe the person who had the opportunity to work overseas just took the job because want to travel, not because of the job.
Right.
And then the spouse is happy because that's all she or he wants to do is have the opportunity to travel, so that works out.
Right.
But if that may not always be the case, if you end up, the job takes you to a place where you can travel, then that's that sort of ended your why. So I think it's probably something every expat couple needs to know for themselves.
Right. And it takes such a high degree of like self-evaluation and like being prepared to, kind of in some ways like reinvent yourself, but also throw out the parts of yourself that aren't working for you anymore, And I think that it's possible, not always, but it's possible when you stay in one place that you don't have to as frequently reevaluate why, because maybe you have fewer challenges to it. Maybe not, but maybe, where to continue to choose a lifestyle that causes you to move a lot or to always have to make new friends, you have to every time, everyone does this, right? Every time you move, you're like, oh, why? Why are we
moving again?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's really it's kind of funny in a sense that you sometimes you are making a decision by not making a decision as well.
Yeah.
In this lifestyle. So, but I also totally agree with you that we are thrown into the environment where we have to make decision all the time, like actively, even though for people who seem to be not making that kind of decision, they're also making a decision.
Yeah.
By not making that decision to do something else.
That's true. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah, that sounds like a natural end to our discussion.
For sure.
Anything else you want to add?
It's just such an interesting topic. And, it's so much the kind of focus of my work is helping people think about their why and access that. And I know it comes up so much in yours. So I just find it's I don't know, it's like a really positive, happy thing to think about, even when it's challenging, which is, I think, just kind of like the greatest combination,
Yeah. I guess I will share just one last tidbit about how I feel about it sometimes.
Yeah.
I have this epiphany once, actually right before I moved back to Taiwan, so like earlier this year, because there was, I don't know, at that point I was really thinking about, why are we keep doing this? Maybe there are other ways of live our lives. And I was sort of just praying for some kind of answer to, so, like made me feel better in a sense.
Right.
And I I have just this sudden thought in my head that I was sent.
Huh.
And that is really sort of just like, okay, there is a purpose, even though I don't know what yet. Like, that I think that's that sort of thing that keep us going in this lifestyle. Like, there is that future of unknown, and we actively chose it for some reason. And in that instance, it's like, oh, I was sent to discover that. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like maybe for some of you that currently you are encountering that everlasting question as well, that comes out every 6 months, why are you keep doing this? But yeah, I hope every one of you can find that moment of peace of somehow that, it doesn't have to be, for the rest of your life, but I do feel like there is something for you. There is a purpose, even though you haven't found it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
All right. Well, it's great talking to you, Jody. And thank you for tuning in. And we will talk soon next month.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.